Welcome, everyone, to the third season of Stockbridge Library, Museum, and Archives online poetry series. This season, in our third year, our theme is inquiry and the power of poetry in pursuing questions and answers to questions, but more, I think, in the asking. This series was started by John Gillespie, who is with us today. It was a brilliant idea during COVID lockdown. We thought we'd have a few sessions, and here we are in year 3. I think we've had perhaps over 80 sessions now. Is that right,
so.
John? So
Yeah, I think
we're
so.
very delighted to continue to present. And John, I want to express gratitude on behalf of the library and also the poetry community for your great idea and your tenacious pursuit of getting poets from around the country and sometimes around the world to join us. And today we are very happy to have with us Gunilla Kester. Gunilla was born in Sweden, and she is an award-winning poet and author of If I Were More Like Myself, which was published in 2015 by the Writer's Den. She has 2 poetry chapbooks, Mysteries 1 through 23, and also Time of Sand and Teeth. Those were both published by Finishing Line Press. She was co-editor of The Empty Chair, Love and Loss in the Wake of Flight 3407, and its companion volume, The Still Empty Chair, More Writings Inspired by Flight 3407. Dr. Kester has published numerous poems in Swedish anthologies and magazines. I will not try to pronounce this because I'm sure I'll do a terrible job, but most particularly in Sweden's most prestigious literary magazine. She's a Fulbright scholar and authored a study entitled Writing the Subject, Building and the African American Text. And she has published many articles in academic journals and anthologies. Gunilla, thank you so much for joining us today. I will turn the program over to you, John and Gunilla.
Great,
Thank
Wendy,
you,
thank you very
Wendy.
much. So Gunilla, I'm going to dive into sports just for a minute before we do the poetry part. Do you know who Borja Salming is?
Who what?
B-O-R, I think J-E Salming, S-A-L-M-I-N-G. He just died last week. He was one of the first European players
Oh,
to
yes,
play.
yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah,
your
yeah.
pronunciation.
Yeah,
Yes,
he
yes. Of course, I grew up with him.
Yeah, he was played for Toronto for 14 seasons, and they had he died. I mean, I think 3 weeks ago they had a night for him in Toronto, and I'm a hockey nut, and it was such a tribute. And he had, latent ALS, and he still was able to drop the puck.
Yeah.
And you'll love this. For the first time in NHL history, an NHL team started the game, Toronto, with an all Swedish lineup, which was, no, just great story. And one of my good friends from DC is from Sweden. So whenever there's a Swedish story, I've got to get on text or email or stuff like that. So I thought you'd enjoy that little hometown story. So back to poetry after we've just gone through hockey.
The poetry, it's the same.
Poetry. Well, hockey has a little poetry to it, after the, bumping and grinding and things like that. So Gunilla, share with us, what does inquiry mean for you?
Well, I wanted to share with you, I got one of many rejection letters this morning, and I will quote what it said. In your writing, there is such an elegant balance that carries most of the weight. And I thought that was really an interesting
Yeah.
way of putting it, an elegant balance. Because if you have a balance, it means that there are two sides. There is
Yeah.
juxtaposition, there is paradox, there is balance, unbalance, contradiction, and a kind of tension. And so that's what I feel inquiry is, that we unbalance what's balanced and we try to balance what's unbalanced.
So we're trying to balance what's unbalanced. And what was the other one? We're trying to
Yeah, I mean,
unbalance what's,
sometimes if it's too balanced, you, as a poet, you try to unbalance it, or if it's too unbalanced,
it's like, yeah.
yeah. I just thought it was interesting because it implies that there are two parts. There's some kind of tension in the poem itself to make it interesting, to make you want
No,
to.
that is a, a good point of view because, I guess, for every question, the flip side is there might be an answer. So there's a question and answer. There's a lot of, I think, well, the universe is built on balance. So no, I think that was a very good analogy. So how does that work with you then, the balance part? I'm just trying to play this out. If
I
you're
don't think
engaging,
I'm
what's
not
that?
the I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. How I work it out, I mean.
Oh, I didn't know if when you're writing or revising, all of a sudden you're seeing some lines and you feel like you might want to take the opposition. You might want to take another point of view. Just a question. I mean, it doesn't, just I'm just wondering if no, I'm just wondering if that balance thing to me is just intriguing.
Yeah, I think for me, I know I have a poem or poetic material when I get to something that surprises me.
Yeah.
That there's often during the process of writing, there's a line, and you just say, "Aha, that's the ending of this poem." And I can't explain how that process works, but you're
Yeah.
working for the surprise that something you yourself didn't know, that you are finding out as you're writing. And maybe
Yeah. I
there's a
think,
balance there or an answer, but often it's a question.
well, I think the balance is if you're waiting for that one line, maybe that means that the cup is full and you're ready to move on to something else. Yeah, I guess the question is just that one line just kind of, I don't know. I've heard some people talk, it just comes out of the heavens. It just kind of floats down and lands itself on the page. Or is it something you've been, once again, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but is it something where you've been tussling or wrestling with a poem and all of a sudden the puzzle pieces fit together with that one line?
The line can shake up the puzzle pieces and they all break apart. That you thought you had the logic and everything lined up, and then there outbursts this thing that changes everything. It's like having a child or something. But I think a lot of my work comes from dreams. And I always say poetry begins where words end. That you're trying to explain something, whether it's to yourself or somebody else, but you come to a point where you don't have the words. That's when you write the poem.
Wow. Nice. Write the poem you don't have. Very nice. So are there some poems you'd like to read for us?
Well, I picked a few poems that have questions in them.
Okay.
So I'll begin with these are some new poems. Um, and this one is a question for God. For those of you who don't know me, I am quite a good guitar player. That's the context. Guitar shops, 4 continents. Why, God, is it that when a woman walks into a guitar shop, humble or renowned, the man behind the counter sports a smile that snakes around his face like the alleyways leading up to red Alhambra as he hunts through his teeth and sighs while he brings forward his cheapest instrument, pointing to a low chair by the door without a footstool or a moment of peace, while dust and noise stream in, blend with the glory of a Bach prelude, traveling from major to relative minor to the 5/5, and I shake my head. Well, I want to shake the unresponsive guitar, and I really want to shake the young man with his black mustache, which blinds him to the fact that women can play too and have better rhythm or ear than he does. And what about God, who could turn the driftwood guitar golden with a snap?
Okay, I think what I got from that is if I see you entering a store, I'm going to exit stage left. I think that's what I. Very nice.
Did you want me to read another
Yeah,
one?
no, keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah,
Keep
all
going.
right. So, I come from Sweden. Now, Sweden, as far last time I checked, Sweden has per capita accepted more migrants in Europe under the current crisis made worse with the war in Ukraine, um, than any other country in Europe. And it has changed our culture and our politics, sometimes in very unfortunate ways. But I'm not going to go into that right now. I do want to mention before I read this, because people have asked me before, there is in America a root vegetable called a swede. So I'm using it here in a kind of humorous fashion,
Oh boy.
yeah, since I am a Swede. There's also a mention here about chimneys, that somebody heard somebody say they had too many holes left in those chimneys, and these are the chimneys of the concentration camps in Germany. So the reference is for somebody hearing she's Jewish, she survived, she's standing in the lines for the soup kitchen in Germany, and somebody said they had too many holes left in those chimneys. So I just wanted to clarify that,
Yeah.
because it's been something people have not understood before. So the poem is called Border Note. Cook now the ancient way, black iron kettle on the open fire, like my grandmothers and their mothers did. Put in whatever you find, potato, turnip, rutabaga, carrot, swede. Laugh at the name when you add the swede. So tough and dry, won't break for nothing, hard to digest. We boiled old Christina when she stopped laying eggs. Heat bricks in the fire, stick them under your skirt. Your great grandmother was tied to the stockade for stealing bread to feed her sons. I must give you the ornate antique silver spoon my mother gave me on the night before my wedding. The last thing here of value. Large but supple. You can hang it inside your shirt, a leather thong around your neck. I found some fallen apples. under your birthday tree, but left them on the ground. Some knowledge we just can't live with. How many people have we never met, yet remember? Your mother in the food lines after the Second War, hearing they had too many holes left in those chimneys. Twice now I have dreamt you came in quietly behind me, following. Starling shadow, what does that mean?
I apologize to everyone if I'm coughing and rubbing my eyes. There must be some kind of allergy today, so it's
We understand. I'm getting over COVID. I'm like, sniffle. No worries.
no, it's not COVID, just stuff blowing in the air all the time up here. Yeah, I think yeah, winter, pre-winter.
Yeah.
You already had winter, so you're done almost. You're ready to go to spring.
I wish.
Is there
So let's
time
just
for you?
say, yeah, go ahead,
there-
Emily.
Is there time for you to read that again?
Well, I have many more. I can send it to. I'm sorry I didn't answer your email yet, but it's just been a little hectic here. But
Okay.
it's so I wanted to read my actually newest poem and try
Okay.
it
Okay.
on you. May I? And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Paul, it's another, in a sense, it turned into another. I married into a Holocaust family, so it's always part of the family. And this one turned into another one that with that material. It's called After the Storm. So it was after the snowstorm, but it's also the storm of the Holocaust. And it's my daughter we are talking about. Now she's over 30. After the storm, we parachute into a new garden, borders erased, minutes changing size. Can a frozen Eden be well watered? Pond's ice blind eye staring at a white sky. Strangers follow the red moon, grow and diminish, nothing plain in the unknown. No longer visiting, yet they are welcome. We set a plate at the table for unnamed ghosts and guests. Remember walking downstairs to hug a book, to trace it, smell it, read a name. At Yad Vashem, a hand, and names in tombs, no paradise. At Berlin's Grunewald station, track 17, metal plaques, one for each deportation of Berlin Jews, October 1941 to February 1945. None of them to Eden. Names extraneous, not included. 50,000 names, too many. They follow moon and word. Strange, but not extraneous. Knowing their names is constancy, not lunacy. Synergy between then and now, holding them a choice. It's boring, says my 7-year-old, stamping her bare foot. You're old enough to choose, I say. But no, 1.5 million were children just like you, murdered for being what you are. If we don't remember, who will? Looking at the spring garden greening outside our kitchen, I pray. When we leave, she comes along, hair brushed and braided.
Very nice. Very nice. Are you pulling a new book together, or?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I've had, I think, in the last year, over 30 poems published.
Yeah.
I don't know how many poems do you need for a book? I don't know.
I have no idea. I don't
So
know.
I will look into it. And yes, I would like very much to. I think right now it feels like I feel like I'm writing a lot. So I just want to. It's like you're split, right? You are the creative poet who throws darkness where there was light, and then you are the editor who is like throwing lightness on the mess.
Yeah.
It's very hard to balance whom you are at the moment. So I think feeling a little creative, maybe because I have had more time during the pandemic to be by myself. So
Yeah. Hey, I'd stay with the creative side. There's always time to pull it together when you have some great material like that.
yeah.
So let's have the audience. We always have a little break now where we encourage the audience to ask some questions, give some comments. As I say, don't let the poet off easy, Emily. We want you to quiz her, make her sweat. Only kidding. Kathy Haley knows because we do this every week. No, I think it's time to just interact with the poet. So, raise your hand or just speak up if you have a question or a comment. I'm not seeing anybody here. Yeah, usually Perry would be on. He's an instigator. He always has a question.
I'll try one,
Okay.
John. One of the things that fascinates me is how you're able to weave so many things together into a poem that has, kind of a unified idea. I feel like I want to learn more about how to take different aspects of my experience and make them work for me in a poem instead of setting out to write a poem about one of those experiences. Do you have any advice on that? Or strategy that you use, or does it just come naturally?
I mean, some of it just comes by itself, I guess. But I have certain things I like to include, say, a quote. I like to include voices, that just to makes it more immediate, like what somebody went through. And I like to, I come from a long, here's my grandmother up there who was a brilliant pianist. And, it's like the women in my family, there's like lots of knowledge we have that nobody else knows. So I always like to include that.
Nice.
And that we are somehow, even though, of course, my great grandmother I've never seen, but I know a lot about her. So the women talked about what women did and how they did it. And say during the Second World War, my grandfather was in the white snowsuits on ski patrol for the Swedish army at the Finnish and Russian border for years. And my grandmother home with 4 kids and no hot water. They had to boil every drop of hot water. So I know it's nothing to say what Eva's family went through, I think, but we grew up knowing these things. So I try to weave them together, that what happened to my grandmother is the same. I mean, now I live in more comfortable circumstances than she ever did, but we know each other. She's here with me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
That's great. That's great. Anybody else? Kevin, Ewa, Emily? we'll have another time to talk later in the show, so they don't have to.
Ask. Um, we have a question. Do you always write in English, or do you start in Swedish? Or
I wrote my first poem in English right after 9/11. And I hadn't written a poem for 20 years because I wrote in Swedish. I came here on the Fulbright. I did this. I'm sorry, the phone is ringing. And so I didn't write in English because I didn't have the language. And then after 9/11, I had a huge fight here in Buffalo. We had just moved here and I had only one friend. And we had a huge argument about something stupid. And I lost a friend. And when I drove home, I had this feeling in my mouth. And I remembered when we were kids in Sweden, we didn't own many things or clothes or stuff. And so we would go down to the beach in the morning. And there's somebody here picking some, don't worry about it. And we would bring one little sandwich we had, dark bread with cheese. And then, if you were like me, when you got hungry, and sooner or later, my sandwich always ended up in the sand. And then you had this feeling of sand between your teeth because you had to eat the sandwich. It's all you had. So that was the beginning of me writing in English. And my first book, Time of Sand and Teeth, includes that poem and that experience. And my dentist loved it. He had it on his wall for a long time because I had the teeth in it. But I think being bilingual does influence, because even now, I mean, I mostly only talk English. I have some Swedish friends here, but we don't see each other very often. So, but the other language is always somehow pushing beneath. And I just went through this experience Eva and I did about going through translation, Google Translate and Traverso and those things, and just, feeding your English poem and going through these different languages. And I resented it. I didn't like it. Because it felt like a new way of cheating or a kind of imperialism, like, here I have my English poem and I'm going to use your exotic languages and cultures to flavor my poem. I did it because I was assigned to do it, but I doubt I'll ever do it again. But the other language, and I tried for 30 years to get rid of my accent and finally gave up. But the accent is there in the way the lines work and the lines break. Eva, what do you, Eva, I know, is a friend of mine. She is bilingual also. Do you have that same feeling?
Actually, yes, but I started writing in English because I'm here. And I want, I want to communicate with people who don't know Polish. I'm Polish American. So this is the reason. And so that was interesting, what you just said, that it was 9/11. For me, it was, I joined a poetry group and I wanted them to know Polish poets and Polish poems. So at first I was reading the poems translated by other people. And then, and in the meantime, I wrote my Polish in English. And then I translated poems. I started translating poems myself. And as Gunilla said, I also resented this exercise. And it started not even, not with automatic translation, but I really believe that people who translate poems from the other language should be, very familiar with the language, culture, and history of the country of the poet written in this original language, or closely collaborate with a person who has this knowledge. And I don't think I'm going to change my opinion before I die. So, well, thank you.
Great. So Gunilla, let me just follow up. I was trying to understand this kind of hand signal here. I guess one language was pushing against the other.
Oh,
Just
with the
to-
languages, yeah, that I often feel that my native tongue is pushing under the English and kind of, so I'm writing in English, but there's somebody,
Someone knocking on the door.
actually my daughter is just walking in, so it's funny.
There we go.
Oh, it's my
All
husband.
orchestrated. Yeah.
Perfect.
So when you're writing those, your native language keeps trying to pop into your writing.
I think so. I think it's more than language, it's culture. It's the way you react to things. Yeah, it's who you are, that it's still so much part of you.
I have a question about one of my favorite poets is Harry Martinson.
Oh yeah.
Now, what do you think of Harry?
Harry Martinson is I think, hero in Sweden. He was sold as a boy. He was an orphan, and probably totally illiterate. And at the time, I've never really understood this, but the children who were sold to families who needed help on their farms or whatever, the ones who paid the least got the kid. So Harry went to a terrible situation, grew up there, and then became this brilliant writer, and I think a member of the Swedish Academy. So yes, I have read a lot. I have it here in Swedish if you want to know. If you want any translations, I'll give them to you.
Well, I have several of his books. I especially like Gudinan of Hin.
I'm sorry?
Gudinan of Hin.
Gudinnan of?
Hin, Hyn.
Huh.
Skin in English. Skin.
Of hud. I'm sorry, it's just we
Well,
pronounce it differently.
yeah. Okay. He spells it Hyn.
Hyn. So that's a name of a place, I think. Hyn. Or a place on the land, like whatever you jot out into the water, they have different names for it. I'm not familiar, but I will be by
Oh, yeah. In the Swedish schools, do they teach much poetry?
when I grew up, they did. And we had to kind of memorize. I remember in 5th grade, I had memorized a poem that was like long.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of dominated the whole class because never. But yeah, we read a lot of classics and we read a lot of Swedish literature. Yes,
Cool.
Right.
much more than the students do here.
Uh-huh.
And it was
So
more
Gunilla,
pride thing to be Swedish, and we could write
Yeah.
read these things. Yeah.
What I like about your Swedish American speech is you're very slow. So that it's very good for poetry because we can understand and savor the words better. And maybe that's because of the cadence of the Swedish language. It's slower, maybe.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think I can be very fast. I mean, I was a professor in English for some 30 years, and I could be very quick if I needed to.
Oh,
So,
well,
but
you're,
maybe it is something about the cadence of the, I'm a musician too, so I feel the melody is very much part of the line.
thank you.
So Gunilla, let's share some more of your poetry with us, please.
Okay. The next one is actually very good answer about weaving together things, because it's about my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my mother,
Wonderful.
ending up in 1945 in Sweden. Family story. The her is my mom. Her grandmother died boiling coffee, grinder's handle silky from use. She fell to the floor without a word, dark snow weaving into her white hair. Her mother given away at 4 to a barren woman with a store full of bread. My mother in the earth cellar, a mountain of dirty seed potatoes. Her job in the cold hole to remove the sprouts, those seeing eyes wishing to grow into light. Her 18-year-old body wanting the same. A man running through the forest, clanging a big cowbell. The war, he shouts. The war is over. Kriget är slut. Fred, fred. Peace at last. Cold and hungry, my mother stares up at the man and asks, "What war?"
Ooh,
True story.
yeah, I was gonna say. Very nice.
And here's another poem that ends with a question, and it's a little lighter. It's called The Mosquito. We have a lot of mosquitoes up there in Scandinavia in the summer. If you ever want to come and visit me in my little house, be prepared. This was published in the Trampoline some time ago. The mosquito doesn't like my own negative blood, goes for succulent positive flavors. Sitting on my veranda late in the evening with a glass and remnants of runes and letters in different shapes and forms. I offer my slim, pale arms and ankles, blood veins writing their underground story. At night too, grating against walls and blinds, but never landing, making me think and rethink, did that actually happen? Or did I just want it to have happened, to be real, even if it's only a longing, a shiny, sticky drop of blood left on our kitchen floor after the dog bite? My father telling me it was nothing and reciting a poem full of stoic phrases, If by Kipling, or was it Goethe that night, or Homer? Or did he kneel by my side and wash my hand clean, kiss it, and put on a bandage brushed with honey? Believe me, it was Kipling. I've written a few poems about my middle school in direct translation. Lerbäcksskolan would translate to Mud Stream Middle. And yeah, there are quite a few poems from Mud Stream Middle, and this is the latest one. Now, I want you to know my sister became mentally ill and died rather young. And so this is part of the background of this story. 7th grade at Mudstream Middle. He's a little weasel of a boy with freckles and sharp teeth, who does not sparkle, but knows how to bully. Clomp, 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 he shouts after my sister when she walks into her 9th grade class in her Israeli boots made of paper, but looking military tough. And something breaks inside of me, like a big glass window blown out in an explosion. I feel something clean, sharp, and shiny rise like a sickle of the moon or my father's reaping hook. I grab a big shard from within and lick its edge to feel the cutting power. Tasting blood, I run down the stairs 3 steps at a time and use my momentum to jump on top of him like the wild cat used to leap off the roof of our house when I called her for pieces of bread soaked in milk. She kept her claws away from me, but I have mine ready. Shiny razors. I will not let him go. For years, he spits on the sidewalk when he sees me.
So we now
Good for
have two
you.
things. Yeah. Don't go to a guitar store with Gunilla. Don't visit a middle school. There's a list of, yeah. There's a Gunilla don't do list, not a to-do list. They don't accompany her.
Or do accompany me. I need friends.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like it. I like you like to mix it up. I like that.
So this next poem, I think, was just accepted, but I can't recall now the name of the publication. But it was also, I spent a lot of time thinking about these migrants in Europe in the last 8-10 years, from Syria, from Afghanistan, many of them children. And so this poem grew out of that. And I knew some, and I met some. I couldn't speak to them in any linguistic way. So I wrote this poem was for them. It's called The Verbless. How did you lose all your verbs? I ask him. And since he cannot tell me, he begins to gesture, points to my kitchen, the stove, the old broom, shaking his head. Ah, many verbs you left behind at home? I try to translate his verbless intent. Your wife and daughters are sweeping leftover verbs into a pile they cannot read, hidden behind a door next to the stove where they are protected and preserved. He points out the window toward the beach where the waves break, 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 a restless gray sentence without end. Ah, some verbs sank on your perilous journey, many more lost among the murdered and the drowned. You still hear them scream in clear calls against the smugglers and the storms. He lifts my hands to his temples. Ah, other verbs you lost track of in your memory. Life forced you to abandon the joyful verbs, the cool, strong, and the needed verbs, until your tongue became a migrant too.
Very good. Very visual. Really nice.
Here's another new one called Nightfall, and it's a double meaning of I will fall on the in the mud, not at Mudstream Middle, but in the garden, and it's also the night falling. Nightfall. The best is when I kick open the side door and meet a mist woven like a Berber carpet hiding a pool of mud. I discovered too late slipping, and the bucket of peels from last night's dinner kicked over by the wild rabbit with ears longer than my fingers, or the groundhog, knowing I'm about as smooth as a number 60 grit sandpaper. The only one awake I see in the sudden rain we needed and didn't expect. The almond tree come closer, deep alabaster blooms filling like cups, fog stirring branches, and my body under the trees rubbing against stones. Our home suddenly dark inside, lit by slanted outside beams. While I keep an eye on our fences, I wish I could put my hand in the bird bath filled with leaves, mustard smell of stagnant water, wanting to stretch my body among waves eloquent, free of these spaces.
Yeah, very nice.
I'm sorry
Let's-
about
let's-
the background noise here. Can you hear me okay?
Let's take just another couple minutes if anyone has another question or comment. I always like people to kind of get that out before we close out the hour.
I have one actually about the verbs poem, the migrant poem. And I just really loved the poem, but I kept wondering, how did you come up with that idea to talk about the verbs?
Well, it's a matter of agency, I think. A verb is what is you call it an action
Right.
word, right? And when you go from being a citizen to becoming a migrant, was my feeling. I'm a very privileged immigrant. I came as a Fulbright student. But still, I am an immigrant, and there are things here that I do kind of sympathize and understand in some way. And so, but I think that you lose your agency when you become statslös, as we used to say, stateless. You have no papers, you have no passport, you have no country, you have no language anymore, and especially not the verbs, because you can no longer say, I will do this, which is using a verb, because you have to just accept that you become kind of a silenced person. Now, my father-in-law was Staatslos for years as a German Jew in Europe during and after the Holocaust, and he's still alive in Los Angeles at 97. But I think that sort of was I have written a series of these poems. There's one. For a long time, I felt that there was this woman, wife, mother in Syria who talked to me. I can't explain it any other way, but I wrote about how her husband disappeared and how she experienced, and she had no words either. So she used all the items in her kitchen. She couldn't read or write. But that she would iron. Oh God, give me my heavy iron. And if you send me your email, I will gladly send you the poem.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah. No, very nice. So Gunilla, do you have one or two more poems to close us out for today?
I actually would like to end with this persona poem
Great.
about my ladder back in Sweden. So I have a little summer house at the end of land in Sweden. And when the pandemic hit, I was terrified because we didn't go for years, that we had left the ladder. We usually put it in the shed for winter, right? But that we had left it outside and it was just standing there leaning against the house. So this is the persona poem from the perspective of a ladder accidentally left out in the garden. academic
I love
science.
it. I love it.
And it was published also, I forget where now. Oh, there's some publication here about the Big Lakes Review or something. Anyways, it's called Ladder Dies by Light. Now remember, in the shed, it's dark, so it's left outside. Ladder dies by light. Whitethorn spear raised higher than the lilacs. Honeysuckle strangling nettles and the bramble. Scent so sweet, I almost fall into tall grasses. Wild clover already to my middle. Moss on stones, steps, doors, trees. Where are the feet? I counted their steps to measure my height. Tall as a tower, taller than salt. Before people can come, I'm no good even for fire. What with the worm, mold, the rot? I used to fret over the lack of rest, the moving me around just like a tool. But I am no fool here, now in this hibernation. No, I am as useless as this house I'm leaning on.
Beautiful. Beautiful. No, thank you very much for,
Thank you for
for-
having this third
Oh,
time. Love it.
I know. You'll be getting obviously your certificate, your trophy, a free trip to Sweden. It's all part of the big package. Look at you go, yeah. No, Gunilla, thank you very much. You always bring such a different perspective to our hour. And but I think the verbs and the ladders, Kathy, I'm now I'm gonna every time I go outside, I'm gonna see if we've got these little bird feeders. Maybe the bird feeders I have in my yard are feeling neglected and they're starting to talk to me. So
There you go.
yeah, I know. I'm gonna say, hey, Gunilla told me to talk with you today. It's okay if you're quiet now. Don't use any verbs. I'm just gonna sit here.
Wonderful.
Oh man. No, thank you again, and everyone. We'll see you next week, next Tuesday. Thank you very much. Take
Thank you,
care.
everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.